I was getting prepared for the surgery. Before that, I had to sign some documents. And that's when I really started to think, I don't want to do this, right? But at the same time, I was thinking, well, I already got this far. I am here. I paid for the surgery. As I was fading away, I was just thinking, I don't want to be here. Just get me out of here, you know? At first, when I woke up, I didn't really know where I was and what happened. I kept staring at a wall. It was just this blank stare, like something inside of me died that day. I regretted it at that moment. And I think I already did, actually. Like, at that point, I already was thinking, what the hell have I done?
How did you start to experience gender dysphoria?
Yeah, there are many factors at play as to why I started experiencing gender dysphoria, even though I like to call it sex dysphoria, to be honest, because and I mean the way I view sex and gender as like two different things, or perhaps two different aspects of the same thing. It's the biological and physical aspect of that, and there's the psychological and phenomenal aspect of that. And what we usually refer to as gender, I think of that as a psychological and phenomenal aspect of sex. Um, so I wasn't dysphoric towards what was in my head. I was more dysphoric towards my body, which I think is the case for most people who experience this sort of dysphoria. Uh, it started with the fact that I was always experiencing some sort of existential and bodily anxiety. I always thought my body was disgusting, and not ever since I was a small kid, and not necessarily in the sense that it was disgusting because it was a male body, but rather because it was a body. Like when I was thinking of all the physiological function my body has, that all of our body has, I was thinking like, oh, there's something deeply, deeply wrong with that. I'd rather not have a body. So the seed of the issue is already there to begin with, and I always struggled with the thoughts of mortality and aging. Um, so when puberty first hit, that was obviously a very negative thing for me. The second factor that why my relationship with my body was really, really negative is because of a very conservative religious Catholic upbringing, um, which really planted this feeling of guilt in me. Like, I saw the whole process of puberty as something that was just wrong and evil. Like, it was some sort of demon I had to get out of my body. And it didn't help that I had an absolutely insane sex drive that was pathological. I think a lot of teenagers have high sex drive when they're first hitting puberty, but in my case, that was absolutely insane. We're talking 11 hours a day of masturbation, actually, to the point where I started developing both pain and bleeding and all sorts of stuff down there. It was painful, and it further led to me developing even worse relationship with my body. And I never had a sexual attraction towards women, and in my head, I always viewed women as asexual in a way, and I viewed that as an escape. Like, I was thinking, like, if I was to become a woman, I would sort of return to my childhood, which is something I wanted at that time, because once the sex drive hit in, it felt like that's nice cat.
She's trying to get in Take the spotlight from
I
you.
want all
Go
the
ahead.
attention.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So once the sex drive hit, it felt like something was taken away from me. And that was everything I had before that. Like, not thinking about it, not caring about it. I just enjoyed my childhood, enjoyed my life. And then this hits and fully takes over. I didn't agree with that. I didn't want that. I felt like I had no autonomous choice in that. Like, I never asked to have a sex drive in the first place, never wanted it. uh, so I absolutely hated being a guy. And then there was the final factor, or two final factors actually. One of them was the intense homophobia, where I grew up. And growing up as a gay kid, in an environment like that, where you hear that we are disgusting, we don't deserve to live, it just, I mean, it makes your relationship with yourself so much bad, because you starting to believe that, and then you're directing all that hate towards you, and you're starting to think, hey, you know what? It's actually better to be a heterosexual woman than a homosexual guy. So what I started to say, a lot of people used to call me gay and bully me all the time. It's because I was smaller than other guys. I wasn't particularly masculine in my behavior and my appearance. So I started saying, like, I'm not gay. I'm a woman. I'm a heterosexual woman. This is absolutely normal, right? And you can convince yourself sort of that it is normal, and you start to believe that. So I was sort of living in a delusion, really.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So that was a lot that you covered, and I did want to ask you, can I ask, when you were in that phase of, like, I guess you said like pathological high libido, masturbating like 11 hours a day, how long did that last? How many years of your life was that? Or, what ages was that approximately?
Yeah. It started first, um, uh, like in I was 13, like late 13, almost 14. And that's when it happened for me. And it was going on until I was 19. That's when I went on testosterone blockers and estrogen, and that was what actually helped me there. So I'm thinking, like, even if I wasn't to transition ever, at some point I would probably have to take testosterone blockers just to function in my daily life, because I wasn't functioning really because of that. So that was 6 years, something like that.
Okay. And then during that time, you were getting bullied a lot at school?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was that like for you?
Oh, I always hate talking about it, but that's okay. That's okay. There were stages of that. I think I always experienced some kind of bullying, ranging from the very early. It was about just me being different, me not being able to relate to other kids, having different interests, different tastes. And they just considered me weird. I was called a weirdo and a freak a lot of the time. And I also had asthma as a kid, so I had problems breathing, had problems running and doing physical things. So during gym classes, I was always one that was picked the last. I was always laughed at because of that. And then the middle school, or secondary school, I think you call it middle school in US. Don't you? Yeah.
Like
That,
ages around like 11 to 13
oh, okay.
is
So
middle school.
middle school in Poland is from like 13 to 16 ish, something
Okay.
like that.
Mm.
So by the time when I was 13, a lot of other boys started to become more masculine. They started developing those secondary sex characteristics. I pretty much still looked like a kid. I was much smaller. I was underweight, and so when that happened, um, I was told a lot of the time that I'm not a real man. I could never ever become a real man. That no woman would ever want me. And you start to believe that. And even though I have no sexual interest in women, I was throughout a majority of my life I was dating women just to prove a point that it's not true what they said that I can't like get a girl, whatever that means, and it's sort of like a parasite living in your head that actually stops you from fully enjoying your life and being yourself because you're so preoccupied with that. And I was doing like some really stupid things just some years ago where I would go on a date with a girl and just hold her hands or something and walk around town and like thinking actually not about her at all, but just everyone else, and thinking, do they see me as a heterosexual man? Like that's what it was about every single time, and I never ever like continued those relationships. Did I ever want to go any further? But yeah, it's strange and stupid, but you know, I moved on from that. So
There's a lot that's very understandable there, given all the bullying, the abuse towards you from the other kids, whether it was mental, emotional. And when did you start to feel like maybe this is something that can be changed about me? When did you start to identify with the trans label?
mm, I don't think I ever identified with sorry, the trans label. To be completely honest, it
Okay.
was more like I identified as a woman, but I didn't identify as a trans. Like I didn't want to be a trans person. I didn't want to be a trans woman. I just wanted to be a woman to escape my own physical reality. And I wouldn't even say that I necessarily identified as a woman. It's more that I didn't want to be a man. That's what it was really about. And I've noticed this thing in many other detransitioners I talk to. Not everyone, because there's a lot of detransitioners who like genuinely wanted to transition, but there's a lot who would say, I didn't want to be the opposite sex. I just didn't want to be a man, or I didn't want to be a woman, right? And that's a big red flag. And if I was to like look into some case and conclude whether transitioning is the right thing for them or not, one of the first things I always ask is, do you generally feel like you identify as the opposite sex, or do you just not want to be your sex? That's the biggest red flag there can be.
Okay, so do you feel if someone had asked you that, that you would have been aware of that, of what the answer is, that you didn't want to be a woman?
Oh, I think if someone was to talk about it with me back then, it'll likely challenge my way of thinking. I mean, I can't really know that with certainty, right? Like it's
Sure.
impossible. We can talk a lot about what ifs and what would have happened if things were
Hmm.
differently, if this happened, if that happened. I can't really know that, but I wish someone challenged me there because didn't have anyone to talk with, and those professionals I went to see, they were just more interested either in money or just pure affirmation, putting me in hormones and so on.
Right. Yeah. And, it's a good point that you make, I think, with that question, because it's a thread that I've heard through many stories of transition regret where people feel like they didn't necessarily want to become the opposite sex, like you said, but there was sort of a need to escape or kind of almost like jump out of their own skin in a way. And then did you ever manage to have a relationship with another boy when you were younger?
Uh, no, no. So, um, I was so deeply in the closet, like that was completely unimaginable for me. So the first time I was in a relationship with another male was when I was 19, and I was already on estrogen and living as a trans woman at the time. So I was like convinced I was in a heterosexual relationship and that I was straight, um, which is just like trying to avoid all the obstacles just to avoid the gay label, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Did the guy identify as straight or as gay or what?
He identified as straight. Yeah.
Okay. And then, how old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I'm 31,
Okay,
actually.
okay. So, when you were 19, you went to a gender clinic. Is that right?
Well, I
About?
wouldn't call it a gender clinic. I
Okay.
went to a privately practicing doctor, and during that visit, like the first thing he told me is just how much it's gonna cost, and everything for my visit, and I have to pay for a psychologist. And I never seen those psychologists. Those were just like printed psychological tests I had to fill, and just do a brain scan, blood tests, and what else? Think I had to had my eyes checked, whether it's just to find out whether you have some type of tumor or something like that. Apparently, the way he explained it is that there are certain types of tumor that can give people symptoms similar to gender dysphoria. So just had to prove that I don't have it, and it was mostly just formality. Like the point was just to put me on the hormones because the whole process took just 5 days. I seen him on Monday, and then throughout the week I've filled the psychological tests, and that was one psychological test to determine gender identity, one to determine sexuality. That one was based on the Kinsey scale. So by Friday, I had that all done. I had my blood tests done and everything, and I gave him all the results. And yeah, I had a receipt for my first dose of estrogen. All happened in a matter of 5 days.
Wow. Incredibly
Yeah.
fast. So, you went to this doctor, this private doctor in Poland when you were 19. You very quickly got prescribed estrogen. What, and was the brain scan, was that also, like you said, to test for just any tumors or anything else that could have been causing it? Or was there
Uh,
like a sexuality gender aspect to that?
I'm not exactly sure why they did that, but I think yeah, probably to look for any brain abnormalities. Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
a
what
lot of the
else were,
time
no,
a
go ahead,
lot of the
please.
time sorry.
That's okay.
Uh, they tend to say that there are observable differences between brains of trans people compared to the brains of so-called cis people. But I'm thinking, like, if that's truly the case, why isn't it used in diagnosing trans people on a wider scale?
Right, right. That's
Hmm.
exactly what you would wonder if that was sort of a foolproof or even close to it thing. Maybe, yeah, you would
Yeah,
see it.
I guess. So
Right.
somehow, I always kind of knew there was like something deep inside that knew that if anyone who has some sort of knowledge about it would figure out that I'm actually not trans, and it was my biggest worry all the time. Like, oh my God, what if I'm not actually trans? What if I'm not actually psychologically a woman? Uh, that was something I was always worried about. So I found it beneficial at the time that that whole process was so easy that I didn't have to talk much about it because that was not something I wanted to talk about it at all. But looking back at it, I definitely had a need to talk about it. But just my brain the way my brain worked at the time was just, it's super goal oriented. It was just like, I decided that I want to go through with this. I have this specific goal, and mind I have to do everything to achieve that. It doesn't matter if I'm wrong about it or not.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, it does make sense, you know, that especially as a teenager, that you just sort of want to take this action that you're set on. And then looking back, it's a lot easier to say, like, I wish I had investigated this more. What
Mm.
else was going on in your life at the time when you were 19? Were you still in school? Were you in university? Were you working? What else was going on?
Um, Actually, when I started when I first started on estrogen, I was on my first year of high school when I was 19. Because when I was 16, I moved to Norway, and I had to waste a lot of time first learning the language before I could continue with my education. So I was going to language school, and I had to basically do secondary school all over again before I could attend Norwegian high school. So just because I, that was a good like language training in a way.
Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. And I imagine that would be quite difficult to deal with as well, on top of everything else you're going through personally, sort of having to adjust to the new culture, the new environment. What was that
Mm.
like for you? What was it like with your peers once you got to Norway?
It was very easy, actually.
Okay.
I found the whole process to be very smooth. I'm pretty good at absorbing languages in general, so I never had a problem with that. And culturally, I was never Polish in any way. A lot of people were telling you that there's like absolutely nothing Polish about me when it comes to culture. I never felt like I fit in Poland at all. So coming to Norway was a blessing. I absolutely love this country. I love people here. I just I fit in better in here than I used to fit in Poland, and
Okay.
it doesn't have the same macho culture. There's more acceptance for men to not live up to that stereotype of sorts. But because of that, I think a cultural difference plays a part in my transition too, right? Because the reason I wanted to transition is just to avoid living up to those stereotypes and gender expectations. I was thinking, like, I will never live up to them, so I might as well live as a woman. My life will be easier that way. And I think Norwegians were just not able to relate to that at all, because the general consensus is that gender roles do not play as a strong role here in this country as they do in Poland. So, because this country wasn't able to relate to my experience there, people just assumed that I was trans, and I assumed that too. So I can't really blame them.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
in a weird way, the more accepting culture kind of didn't allow for the what was underneath to kind of come to the surface. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's like just everyone affirmed my trans identity in a way. At least the people I talk to, because the vast majority of people I talk to didn't know that I was transitioning. Mostly, I tried to find like a new circle of friends and people. So yeah, no, people thought I was just a biological girl, and I was happy about that at the time.
hmm Okay, so I think I said it wrong earlier. I said that you went to the doctor and got estrogen in Poland, but it
No,
was
no, that was correct,
that was
actually.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I went to the private practicing doctor in Poland because I wasn't able to get the standard treatment here in Norway. They're very strict about who they're letting in, and you first have to be sent to a psychologist or even be sent to that clinic or hospital that treats patients with gender dysphoria. I never even went to see a psychologist because they sent me 3 letters, and each time they conclude that they don't see a need for me to go see a psychologist or get any sort of treatment. And if there was only a chance that they would actually talk to me, things could have been different, right? But because that happened, I decided, I need to find another way to get to my goal, and that's how I ended up on this path of private healthcare, which really all they care about is money. Let me tell you, they don't care about their patients. They don't care if this is the right choice for them or not. It's just as long as the money is in their pockets, that's that's just bullseye.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, that's the problem we have here too in the US. Absolutely. So,
Mm.
do you have any idea why you were turned away from the Norwegian medical institutions? Do you have any idea why they said like, you don't need this treatment?
Because almost nobody or it's very hard to go to see like public psychologists in Norway, or it got a little better recently, but I didn't actually get to talk to a psychologist until 20 what was that, 2021, something like that, and that was already after I tried to end my own existence. Like things had to get this bad before they even concluded that I needed help. I kept getting denied year after year after year, even though I was struggling a lot with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, epilepsy-like psychological symptoms, and addiction as well. So yeah, that's Norwegian healthcare for you. And even if I got into that national hospital that treats transgender individuals, um, I find the way they're doing their thing to be highly unethical, and a lot of trans people would actually agree with me on that.
Okay.
I mean, they do
Okay.
agree with me on that. Wouldn't. They actually do.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go back to when you went to the doctor and you got on estrogen, and then from there, how long did that phase last in the transition to estrogen?
Oh, do you mean how long I was on estrogen?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So how long were
In
you on estrogen?
Yeah, in total, 2.5 years, something like that.
Okay. And what was the next step for you? What was the next step in the transition for you?
Well, originally there wasn't supposed to be the next step. At first, I wasn't really considering bottom surgery at all. I wasn't interested in having a vagina or anything like that. But as time went on, I started to think that um, this just makes it difficult for me to pass. And I was thinking, like, if only I did this surgery, like, no one would be able to tell about anything about my past. I could just erase my past. That was what was all about, first and foremost, just erasing my past, becoming a completely different person. And I already felt like, yeah, I did so much to become that. It was just this little part of me that sort of doesn't fit in, right? And it was this and the fact that I didn't want to undress in front of my boyfriend at the time, so I always had some clothing on. And he said that if it continues like that, he's going to break up with me. He can't continue doing this. And, like an alternative that is either I get to surgery or I learn to be naked with him. And I was thinking, like, there's no way I could be naked with him because I absolutely hated that part of me. So Oh yeah, and another thing is that the longer I was on estrogen, the harder it was for me to think. I was experiencing intense brain fog, so I had eventually developed, problems with cognitive thinking and memory, stuff like that. Just it felt like I was sort of half asleep the whole time. My brain just wasn't operating like it usually does. And I think that might have contributed to the fact that I made a horrible, horrible decision to get the surgery. Yeah,
So, how old were you when you did get the surgery?
that was roughly almost 2 years after I started on estrogen. I was 21 when I had the surgery
Okay.
in
And
Thailand.
then in Thailand. Okay,
Yeah,
so, and I want to get to that in a sec, but I still have just a couple more questions about kind
sure.
of what the things that led up to that. So, when you were younger, and I think you mentioned on your YouTube channel that you found out about the online trans community. Can you tell us a little bit about that and when that happened for you?
Yeah, so that was around the time when I was 16. Um, and I was never like a part of an online trans community, anything like that. It was more like I visited there just to learn more about the process. What was I supposed to do to get through the process? I guess I shared my story there. And some people there who were trans said that I definitely have gender dysphoria. It sounds like I have gender dysphoria, and that I should transition, basically. And again, a lot of the time, I really don't like talking about this subject because I think it's not necessarily the best way to go offer about this subject, talking about internet or it being a social phenomenon, because I think in a lot of cases it reduces the problem to something that isn't necessarily the core of the problem. Like, my parents used to say that, oh, it's just the internet. We're not letting you have any access to the internet, you'll stop thinking about it. So they did that, and that never happened. I didn't stop thinking about it because the internet wasn't the source of those thoughts and ideas. And this is one thing I really want parents to know. Just stop blaming the internet or social circles, and actually take interest in what is going on in your child's head, because that's where the issue lies.
Okay, yeah, so there's a deeper issue going on. Like you said, there's, you know, pretty much all teens at this point are on the internet. They're reacting in different ways. So that would point to, like you said, it's not necessarily the source of the problem, it's the source is coming from within. And
Yes.
what do you feel was the source for you? What was I mean, so you've talked a lot about, the
Mm.
bullying and the stuff you went through and being gay. What was I guess, do you remember kind of the first thoughts you started to have like about wanting to either change your
Mm.
sex, escape your sex, things like that?
Well, I think it can be summarized as one very, very simple idea is that I'm not good enough to be a man, so I should be a woman. Which is also a pretty sexist idea, actually, because it implies there is some hierarchy where men are on top, women are at the bottom. Like women are worse than men, and because I didn't feel like I was good enough to be a man, I was thinking I should be a woman. Yeah, I think that's how it can be summarized.
Okay.
Really, yeah.
Hmm. That's really powerful, and that's really kind of illuminating. So, and as I'm absorbing that, it's like I think that really does apply in a lot of situations that I've heard about. So that makes sense. And then going forward, so you were on estrogen for a couple of years, you're a young adult, and you decided that you would go to Thailand to get this surgery. So tell us about, the process there.
Uh, maybe first I should mention just how I got to that point where I got the
Mm-hmm.
surgery, because there's a private doctor in Norway who I eventually went to see, because I found that getting estrogen from Poland was difficult, because it was almost impossible to. At first, my doctor tried to send it to me, to my post box, but that wasn't easy because they usually would check it at the border or at the airport, and just considered it a illegal substance. So I had to travel to Poland, like every third month or something, to buy supplies of estrogen from him and fly back here, and it was back and forth. So I was thinking, like, it would be practical if I found a doctor in Norway who would be willing to prescribe, estrogen to me. And like the National Hospital for patient with gender dysphoria, they wouldn't prescribe that to me because I wasn't their patient, and it's a very long process to even get there. They're very, very strict, and if you started taking hormones anywhere else, it was like they would never accept you. You started there, that's when the doors close. Like, we don't want you, basically. And I think this strictness is also part of the problem, because it makes a lot of people try to find alternative ways to get the treatment, which is not always the best thing for you. That's why I think there is such a thing as too much gatekeeping, I think. And I think that can be just as much of a problem as just letting everyone just take the hormones as long as they can pay for that, right? So I went to a private doctor, prescribed me estrogen, and I think after 3 consultations, I had a recommendation letter for surgery. Already at that point, yeah, on my third consultation with him. He just asked me once if this is what I actually really, really want. I just say yeah. And
Was
to
this
this
the
day,
same doctor who prescribed you estrogen or a different doctor?
no, that was a doctor in Norway, not the one in Poland.
Oh, okay. So you went to a private doctor in Norway.
Yes, in Norway,
Okay.
because yeah, I wanted to I have constant access to estrogen here. So it's really, really strange that this whole thing happened within just 3 consultations, really. And yeah, by the end of the consultation, I'm still convinced that he really, really thought that it wasn't the best option for me, having the surgery. As I was leaving his office, he told me, you know, I think maybe you should think a lot on your way back home. It's like he knew it wasn't the best choice for me, right? But still decided to write that recommendation letter. That's just, I find it so unethical. Like, you don't write a recommendation letter for surgery first and then ask questions later. Like, that's not how it works, or ideally that's not how it's supposed to work. But yeah, that's what he decided will be the right thing to do, I guess, because he didn't want to gatekeep from this. So yeah.
Yeah, and for him to say, go and think about it on your way home, it almost seems like he's trying to just sort of cover his own butt. Like, well, I told him, I told him to
Yeah,
think about it, so you can't blame
absolutely.
it on me, but he still rushed you through, it sounds like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's like you're also taking uh, away your own responsibilities there as a practicing doctor, because you're leaving all of that responsibility on a patient who, mind you, wasn't really emotionally stable. I has My mental health really, really wasn't good at that point, and that was a problem that was never tackled in any way. So they just let I slaved through all those tiny openings in the system, and they never really know just how messed up I was, and allowed me to go through with it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so you mentioned before that you had dealt with a suicide attempt, with drug addiction, with these issues. Was that going on at that time? Or was that later?
Um. Well, the adults developed after the surgery,
Okay.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and, let me ask you about that. So the surgery, they kind of rushed you through. It sounds like so tragic, as I keep hearing in these cases where due diligence was not taken and, enough questions were not asked. So they put you through and they gave you the letter, and then tell us about finding your surgeon.
Oh, so looking for the right surgeon wasn't really uh, that easy. Mostly because I had a Polish citizenship, and actually changing your name in your documents in Poland is very difficult. Especially if you want to change it into a name of the opposite sex, you have to sue your parents, basically. And they had to travel to Poland to meet at the court. There's a whole case. They've said, "F that, we're not doing that." Um, I was thinking like this whole process is way too complicated. So, like in Norway, in my local documents here, I had a female name, but on my Polish passport, and that was the only passport I had a male name. And well, in most cases where you go to get this type of surgery, you have to present your national ID or your passport, and the only one I had was Polish with my old name. So unless that was changed, most places wouldn't let you have this sort of surgery. So I found one surgeon in Thailand who had no issue with that. And I was thinking like, well, beggars can't be choosers. Here's my only option. And I was thinking, well, yeah, let's go through with this. So I got scheduled for the surgery, and that was March 3rd. Yeah, March 3rd, 2014. That's the day of my surgery. So I arrived in Bangkok a day earlier, and then next day in the morning, I took taxi to the clinic, and then talked to the surgeon and the team there, and they could tell I was very, very anxious, right? And they started showing me those pictures of surgery and the effects after surgery. And it's like you have very good, realistic looking vaginas in those pictures, right? Which was nothing like the final result, actually. And I think Richie also talked about this very similar experience on a couple of occasions before. Because mine and Richie's experiences are kind of similar when it comes to that part, when it comes to surgery. And I had Richie on my channel. I know you had him on yours. That's the connecting tissue there. So they could tell I was anxious. So he asked me like, "What are you afraid of? Are you like looking at those gory pictures of surgery?" And I think gory is the term he used, but that's what it was basically. I was like, "No, I have nothing. I'm not scared of blood or things like that." So he said, "So what's the problem?" I said, "Well, I'm worried that something may go wrong." And to that he said, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about. The chance of that is very small." Like that's what he said to me. The chance of that is very small, right? Like, yeah, so many patients, all his patients are satisfied with their results, and all of that. And if there are any complications, they're minor complications, get resolved within the first month of recovery, nothing major. Just made it sound like some kind of dream come true, you know. And, there's a saying, if something sounds too good to be true, it's probably because it is. And that definitely applies to that case. So, later on, I was getting prepared for the surgery. Before that, I had to sign some documents. And that's when I really started to think, I don't want to do this, right? But at the same time, I was thinking, well, I already got this far. I am here. I paid for the surgery. I paid for the tickets to Thailand. I am here. If I say no to that, I come back home empty-handed, then all of that would be pointless. And there was also a part of me who wanted to prove to my parents that it's not just a phase, that I am right, that this is actually the right choice for me. And another advice I can give to parents: never tell your kid that it's just a phase. At best case, it's not just a phase, and they're actually going to be happy as living as a trans person for the rest of their life, which I don't think is a bad thing. Best to you. But worst case scenario, this is a wrong choice for them, but they will want to prove that it's not just a phase. So it's one of the worst things you can say to your kid, and just don't ever say it if there's any parents of trans kids watching. And that was like the driving force for me behind it, that actually helped me find this courage within me to lie down on the operating table. And going on from there, it's just things slowly faded. I don't remember the surgery room at all. It was more like just remembering colors, lots of white and green, really, and nothing much else that I remember from there other than the anesthesiologist who was talking to me. And as I was fading away, I was just thinking, I don't want to be here. Just get me out of here, Yeah.
Okay, so, and then what about when you woke up? What are your memories from that?
Yeah. So at first, when I woke up, I didn't really know where I was and what happened. I thought I was late for school. I overslept, so I wanted to know what hour is it, like what time is it right now, right? But eventually, it dawned on me where I am and what happened, and well, one of the first thing I've noticed is that I didn't have any feeling in my left foot. So my left foot went completely numb. I couldn't feel it at all. And that lasted for almost almost 2 weeks, I think, before I regained feeling in my left foot. And like regaining it completely, that took even longer than that. We're talking maybe 2 months ish. So that got me really worried. But they said, no, it's nothing serious. Don't worry about that. And actually, staying there was sort of a nightmare, but I was at the clinic only for approximately 2 days, because like 2 days after my surgery, on that morning I got discharged from the clinic, and before that they removed the packing that they're like inserting inside of you, and told me to look at it. And it was there was a lot of blood on that packing and all those bandages that they removed. It was like very, very dark blood. And when they like show you this mirror and show the results to you, and it's just, I don't know how to describe what it looks like actually. It was swollen blue and purple. It's like, imagine what your face would look like if some professional boxer was to punch you in your face really hard, like 200 times, over and over again, to the point where you just wouldn't recognize your face. It will just be a swollen, bloody pulp. And that's basically what I had between my legs at that point, just a swollen, bloody pulp. And I didn't say anything, but while I was waiting for the taxi to take me to the hotel, I kept just lying there on my bed, and there was this one nurse in the room with me, and I kept staring at a wall. It was just this blank stare, like something inside of me died that day. And she looked at me, and I'm thinking, she knew. She knew that that was the first sign of regret. That I regretted it at that moment. And I think I already did, actually. Like, at that point, I already was thinking, what the hell have I done? And so I took the taxi to the hotel, and it was really hard to walk because, well, first of all, you had a major surgery located around the center of your body, which makes it very, very hard to move around. On top of that, I didn't have any feeling in my left foot, so stepping on it was really, really hard. I almost felt like I had to jump on one leg, with an injury like that, mind you. And when I got to the hotel, well, the good thing is that I was in a lot of physical pain, and physical pain of this intensity can mask psychological pain. So it wasn't that bad, at least. But I used to take a lot of strong painkillers just to do something with the pain. And so I had my flight back to Norway scheduled for like 2 weeks later. But during that time, I had to be able to pee on my own. So I was taken back to the clinic from the hotel multiple times to get checked if I can urinate. So they used to remove this catheter, and it was really, really painful. I don't know because if it's my part where it is swollen. I don't know if it's because the catheter was too big for my size. But the best way I can describe it is as if someone inserted a knife into you, or maybe like out of your body. I was screaming each time, and we're talking this sort of scream you would hear in like a torture horror film of someone just being torturing, sawed in half, something like that. It was absolutely horrifying experience. And each time I wasn't able to urinate. They would just wait and wait and wait, and okay, we have to catheterize you again and back to the hotel. Come back in a few days. And I absolutely, absolutely hated that. So, at one point, I was so worried because I didn't know if I should stay there longer until this issue is resolved, or should I go back home with a bag of urine being catheterized like that, and then who will remove it for me? Like, that was another issue. Like, where will I find someone who will do that for me, who would know where to put it in if anything happens? Like, they were the only ones who knew those parts, right? Like, they created that whole mess. And I was lucky because just one day before my flight to Norway, I was finally able to urinate. I was urinating blood, but I didn't care. Like, something was at least coming out of there. I could go home. Before that, they also showed me how to dilate. The surgeon performed a dilation on me on that first day, and I was supposed to start dilating after I got home. Um, so when it comes to, yeah, should I talk about dilation or
Yeah, so
if
yeah,
you
I
have
mean,
any questions,
mm,
just ask.
yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I'm so sorry that you went through all of that. It's just horrific to hear about the level of pain and what they put you through, and the lack of kind of awareness of how to help you afterwards. And, thank you for sharing all that too, because
Mm.
it's a lot to talk about and discuss. And,
Oh, I'm used to it actually. Been doing it for
okay,
over a year now, so
okay,
that's okay.
okay, wow, yeah. So, yeah, the dilation, go ahead and tell us about the dilation.
Yeah, I found dilation to be extremely painful and uncomfortable. I, in total, I dilated for maybe 5 months, something like that. I think after like summer 2014, I stopped dilating completely,
Mm.
and I didn't care. Like there's a risk of losing your depth and developing infections and stuff like that. I didn't care. At that point, I was thinking like I'd rather be dead than dilate. And there's another issue that happened right after I got home, because that's the first time I was like able to have a proper bowel movement. I don't know if you want to hear about those details, but
Yeah,
that's a
it's all
big
right.
complication. Okay, so before that, there was no like liquid coming out of me, but at that point, I had like a solid bowel movement, and that is literally the worst thing I experienced in my whole life, and I was experiencing it multiple times a week from there for a couple of years. And that is, well, I found out that probably during the surgery, I ended up having a cut alongside my rectum. And each time I had a bowel movement, it was opening, it was tearing up, and blood was just raining out of me, out of my colon, like into the toilet. I was painting the toilet red. Like this white porcelain was just turning red. The water in it was red, and it's it's a pain that just makes you stop existing. Like your whole inner world dies. There's not a single thought, not a single feeling. There's just pain. There's no room for anything else because you just get so overloaded with the pain that your brain is not able to focus on anything else. You forget where you are, who you are, like you even exist. There is no me. There's just pain at that point. And it got bad over the years. It opens up sometimes. I think there is always a little bit of blood whenever I go to the toilet, but right now it's like small measures. It's very uncomfortable, and it will be for the rest of my life. It sucks, but I don't know how I survived the first 2 years after the surgery, to be honest. And sometimes it was bleeding from like the newly created cavity as well. And sometimes it was bleeding during the dilation. That also used to freak the hell out of me. So that was one of the reasons why I stopped dilating as well. And then there's hair growing in and all of that. And I experience pains down there in the surgery areas. So sometimes, like if I lift something, I will get an intense pain down there. sometimes when I stand up or sit down, I get a pain down there. If I walk too much, move around too much, it hurts. If I run, it hurts. Basically, like my physical functioning is ruined because of the surgery. And I always like to say when I was a kid, I wasn't able to run much because of my asthma. I would have problem breathing. And then when my childhood asthma got cured when I was 16, I could finally do it. And then just 3 years later, I had the surgery, which means I can't run again. So I'm like back to that state again, really. And but I'm alive, so I guess that's a good thing. I'm doing fine. I'm doing much better right now, and especially the last 2 years of my life have also been the best 2 years of my life. That's why I want to end this story on a positive note. And I think there's one thing detransitioners can learn from trans people, and I really like this concept of trans joy. I think that there's this idea that well, it's not just gender dysphoria, it's not just this negative, the bad thing, but we can also be happy. We can, live fulfilling, happy lives. I like it when trans people have this sort of mentality. And when I look at a lot of detrans communities, they filled with a lot of negativity, doom thinking, and it's understandable after what we've been through. But I want to a lot of detrans people considering detransitioning, or people who had those complications from surgeries or suffered from side effects from hormones. I want people to know that there's more to life than that. That you can be happy at the end of the tunnel. It's not the end of the world. Don't let it ruin you, because the way I look at it, I will live with the consequences of those actions for the rest of my life, and I have a choice to either uh, look back at it and carry on all that baggage, or I can move on. And I decided to move on.
Yeah, a really strong outlook. And so, how old were you when you got the surgery, just to clarify? Okay.
21. That was 10
Hmm.
years ago, actually. 10 years and 2 months and 24
Okay.
days,
Wow. So,
precisely.
10 years ago, since then, what was the point where you decided that I mean, you said that you felt regret right away. What was the point where you felt like you would stop calling yourself a woman or change your name back? Or what was that process kind of like?
That was a long process, actually. Even though I had this feeling of regretting the surgery, I regretted the surgery right away. Let me make that clear. And I think, like, even if I wasn't to detransition, if I was still living as a trans woman, I would still regret my surgery. I would still make sure not to recommend the surgery to anyone. I think those surgeries are very primitive. There's where we're not there yet, where like physically changing your sex is a physical possibility. I believe it will be at some point. Absolutely, I have very little doubt of that. Don't think like that sex is set in stone. I think it is able to. We are able to manipulate that. We're not there yet with current medicine and technology. But yeah, sorry. Back to the topic at hand. When I was actually starting to think that, or I might actually, identify as a man, oh, approximately half a year after my surgery, I told my boyfriend at the time that I'm a feminine guy. I'm not a girl. I think that was like one of the first steps I did, was saying that. Then I stopped taking estrogen, but actually I still used my female name. I still very much identified as a woman, but I was like gradually developing more and more masculine style. sort of, I don't know, like I missed wearing clothing from men's section, you know, and it was just this, hey, I want to wear that, and I I sort of knew that I was moving more and more in that direction. So it didn't happen overnight when I decided like I want to go back to living as a man. It was a very very slow process. Actually, I think the whole process with well, if we're starting from that point where I first said I might be just a feminine man, that was in approximately September 2014. Well, I didn't fully detransition until maybe late 2016, early 2017, something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. And oh, and I wasn't on testosterone until 2019, and then I was on testosterone for 2 years, and I hated it. So I'm not taking any hormones right now, and I'm actually pretty happy with it.
Okay. And is that working medically? Is that a long term? Are you going to have to go back on hormones at some point, or do you think you can keep going like this?
That is a good question, and I mean, I don't think there is a healthy long-term option in my case, or in case of anyone who had their gonads removed, who had this type of surgery. My body is not producing natural hormones. The way I see it, I have three options: go on testosterone, go on estrogen, or not take any hormones. Uh, if I go on estrogen, that will just make me hate myself because I don't identify with being a woman at all. I wouldn't like developing any more feminine secondary sex characteristics at this point. I don't want any of that. And on top of that, I know how I felt when it comes to my cognitive ability when I was on estrogen. So that like my brain, I often say my brain is like my best asset. Why would I want to kill my best asset available by taking estrogen, right? When I'm on testosterone, my sex drive goes back to where it was when I was a teenager, which made me unable to function. I hated that absolutely. And then there's this, the issue of side effects of being on hormones. Like those meds, they're not a. I don't see them as a long-term solution. You get liver damage, higher chance of developing stroke and heart disease and so on. Well, it's not healthy being off hormones either. Like what I'm doing is not healthy, but the alternatives are not healthy either. I think, I just made a choice that in the situation I'm in, I made a choice that is the best for me. And it is a choice I made after careful thinking and, weighing all the possibilities. And when you first make a mistake like that, you really make sure to really think things through. And yeah, I'm a eunuch, basically. It will be for the rest of my life. But I'm at higher risk of developing osteoporosis, problems with my bone density because of lack of sex hormones in my body. But I think I'll take that over the alternative any time of day,
Okay.
really.
Yeah, really difficult choices.
Yeah.
Do you still suffer
Mm.
complications from the surgery?
Well, pains, like I said, I don't think those will ever go away at this point. There's discomfort whenever I use the toilet, and sometimes there's bleeding from the artificial cavity that was created there. Because the surgery I had was penile inversion with scrotal graft. So every once in a while, there's something there that opens and starts bleeding. The last time that sort of bleeding happened was in November last year, so approximately half a year ago, and that one actually scared me a little bit. I ended up at ER.
Have you had to get any revision surgeries?
No, no, but I think the only case where I would even consider doing anything like that is if my life was in danger. Otherwise, I want to steer as far away from surgery as possible, and I'm not willing to risk it. I think there's a chance that things could get even worse than they are. So, like, I don't want to mess around with this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not something you should be playing with, basically.
Yeah, and the time that you ended up in the ER, how did that resolve?
Well, it didn't really resolve anything. They just tried to figure out what was happening, but because I wasn't dilating for, well, almost 10 years now, it's not like they can access the inside of it and find out what is going on. They try to examining it on the outside. They try to like insert a finger there. I hated that so much. I mean, first of all, the idea of being seen like that by the doctors and nurses there. Oh, absolutely, absolutely hated it. And being touched there, I hate being touched there. That's like one of the worst things. I don't like it when anyone is touching me there. So, and just the whole setting brings back a lot of trauma. I'm always doing my best to avoid hospitals, emergency care centers, clinics, doctor offices, because all of that, it carries that element of trauma from the surgery. Like I get just there's intense flashbacks that just freeze me whenever I'm in this type of setting, and it's really really horrible. So I'm always doing my best to just steer away from places like that, or any place that will remind me of the surgery. So like, well, Thailand's not definitely not a vacation spot in the future.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah.
For the when you did, you mentioned that you told your boyfriend at the time, I don't feel like I'm actually a woman. I just feel like I'm a feminine man. What was his reaction to that, and how did that relationship function after your surgery?
Um, he never mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
again. Actually, I'm not sure how he reacted to that because I never actually had a chance to see a reaction from him. He just seemed a bit baffled by the whole thing, really. But our relationship didn't really last much after that. I think, yeah, towards the end of October, we broke up basically.
And was
So
that the same boyfriend who had told you previously, I want you to either get the surgery or learn to be naked in front of me? Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was also becoming, well, not aggressive, but he got very angry by the fact that for a long time after surgery I wasn't able to have sex. And actually, when it comes to penetrative sex, I'm not able to have penetrative sex at all because both my front and back hole are not functioning. The front hole has closed completely, and the back door is damaged from the surgery as well. So if just going to the toilet is an uncomfortable experience for me, and I bleed from that, there's just no way I could be safely uh, penetrated anywhere. But you know what? I never actually cared about penetrative sex to begin with. I think there are better ways to be intimate with someone. Like, I'm not that interested in intercourse, to be honest. I think it's overrated
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
And have you been able to have relationships since then where you have been able to have those other types of intimacy?
So, for a very long time, I was dating women mostly because as soon as I detransitioned, I went back to the closet. I didn't want to think of myself as a gay man, and there was a time around 2017 ish or early 2018, late 2017, early 2018, where I sort of started dating guys, but stopped doing that very quickly. Uh, First of all, I heard some homophobic insults that made me just, go back into the closet right away. And I guess there was this sort of mentality that if I am gay, if I date guys, that somehow makes me weaker or worse. And then there was this idea that if I date men, they will treat me as a woman. And that was the last thing I wanted to be treated as when I was, in the process of detransition. When I wasn't fully living as a man for a long time, and I was finally doing that. And I was like, I want to be treated as a guy. I don't want to be treated as a girl. So I don't want to be dating guys for that reason. So I guess I tried to fit the mold of a heterosexual male, even though I wasn't really, really happy with that. So I didn't have a first, like, proper gay relationship until this last year, actually.
Okay. Okay. And so I know you've interviewed Richie on your channel. You have your YouTube channel, which I'm going to link below for people to check out. Do you have any words of advice that you want to give to people watching you, to people who are maybe detransitioners themselves or thinking about, starting a transition?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think it's a good idea to take your time. I think it's a good idea to find someone you can trust, who you can talk openly about this with. I wish my parents were more comfortable around this subject, so I could have honest conversations with them. Um, Take some effort to like truly, truly get to know yourself, analyze your thoughts, and why it is you feel that you want to transition. Uh, I mean, if you find out it's the right choice for you and you're happy with that, I'm happy for you. Um, if you have any doubt, I think it's a good idea to explore. At the same time, another big flag, what I think is a huge flag, is someone who has zero doubt. Like, if I was working at a gender clinic, uh, probably the one group that I would be most cautious with are those who have zero doubt, or like 100% sure that they want to transition. I think I would be more positive towards those who are in between 90 to 99% sure, because I think it's some doubt is a sign of a healthy
Mm,
mind, really. So if you're 100% sure, it's likely because you haven't really give it much thought. It's likely that you are doing exactly what I was doing, where you just set a goal for yourself and would just want to follow through with that goal at any cost.
that makes sense. That's a very good point about a little bit of doubt is a sign of a healthy mind, like you said. And then
Yeah.
for you, you did mention that you tried to take your life. What can you tell us about that? And then maybe just, as sort of wrapping it up on that, because we have been going for a while and it's a lot, I know, to ask of you, but I did
Yeah.
want to check in about that and ask you about that.
Yeah, so that first happened in 2019, and I've mixed some pills with rum, actually, and went to sleep. I faded away, and well, the question is, why did I do that? And Well, I like to say to myself that it was mostly because I wanted my head to just shut up and have some peace and quiet from myself. And I used to take a lot of antipsychotic medicines for that purpose, just to numb myself down. Antipsychotics and painkillers. And I didn't have any, like psychotic symptoms or schizophrenia or bipolar that those meds are usually used for, but they can numb you down. And if your thoughts and feelings are causing you pain, that's it's not a healthy way to deal with that, but it helped me deal with that for a while. And like I said, also painkillers, and I think that also the painkillers I was taking after the surgery helped me develop that sort of addiction. Um, just having a strong need for morphine at the time that didn't go away, and after surgery I got like a enough painkillers to last me for a long time, and I kept taking them, even though I pretty much the pain from the surgery went away, but I continued taking it, and when I ran out of it, I had this really, really intense fear. Oh my god, what am I going to do now? I need those pills. But at the same time, I no longer had like intense pain normally, only when using the toilet, but that pain was so intense that no amount of painkillers could actually help with that. You would need like proper anesthesia to not feel that sort of pain. So, yeah, I mixed all those pills with rum, and I wanted my brain to just shut up. But I also was playing with this thought, like, will I wake up or will I never wake up? Let's find out. As I turned it into a game of sorts, and think like, who cares if I wake up or not? Which is a really, really dark, dark thought. And I was always someone who was very much afraid of death and struggled a lot with the thoughts of mortality. So going from that to someone who attempted suicide, it's a long, long road to get there. And recovery from that was a long road as well. That's also a subject I could like to talk about, but perhaps we don't really have time for that now.
Yeah, well, so maybe, I mean, if you would be interested, maybe we could have a part two sometime, another time, and kind of talk about that journey since then. Um,
Sure, sure. I think could be some other
mhm.
subjects to talk about that I think are interesting, because I really a lot of time I moved away from talking about my own experience, and I'm more interested in actually talking about trans and detrans issues out there, and how to basically move closer towards a possible solution to this debate.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I've been concerned with quite a lot. So I've been developing a pretty good relationship with trans community here where I
Mhm.
live, which I think is a good thing, because I think it's important to build a
Yeah,
bridge.
most definitely. And you have so much experience and knowledge and insight as well to share. And that's so important for the trans community
Mm.
to understand. So that's good. And yeah, I would love to have another conversation if you're down. We could, like you said, get into maybe some of the solutions and just more of your thoughts, because it seems like you have a really insightful and just kind of aware view of a lot of this stuff. So it's really valuable to hear. So thank you so yeah,
Oh, thank you.
absolutely. It's just it's I'm so sorry for what you've gone through, that pain. And the one last thing I was going to
Eh,
ask you was, do you still get prescribed pain medication at all or not anymore? Mhm.
No, 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 not at all. I'm not taking any
Mhm.
meds at the
Okay.
time, and that was what actually helped me improve in a way, even though it was hard at
Yeah,
first.
that makes sense. Okay. All right. So, Alexander, like I said, I'm going to link below your YouTube, your Twitter, your Substack for people to find. And is there anything else that you want to just leave us with or let people know, about your work or like where to find you other than those links?
Yeah. I don't think I existed. Well, there's my Substack, which was also linked in my Twitter. So yeah, you can find it on my main page on Twitter. I wrote only one article so far, and that is about the damaging effects of pornography on young minds. But in the future, I want to write a lot about the concept of consciousness and relationship anarchy and transhumanism. Um, how should we approach research, things like that. So
Okay, excellent. Really interesting. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of your stuff and hearing more from you. So we'll leave it at that for today. Thank you so much, Alexander.